4th, and families are still trying to get home from the holidays.
What an ordeal it's been for so many folks. Tom, how did this happen? Were the roads treated?
They were not treated because this started out as a rain event. The rain would have washed away the treatment. And then the snow came in hard and really built up quickly. So road crews tried to keep up. They were quickly overwhelmed. Then they had downed trees, abandoned cars, wrecked cars. This thing just simply got out of control. And by the way, Senator Kaine finally made it to Washington late this afternoon, Lester.
Well, we hope the same for a lot of folks who have spent some really tough hours on the road. Thank you, Tom. Now to those staggering new COVID numbers. Daily cases surpassing 1 million, all in the midst of that critical shortage of COVID tests. So what happened to the free at-home tests President Biden promised Americans would have by now? Our Peter Alexander has more from the White House.
Tonight, another COVID record setter. More than 1 million new infections reported nationwide in just 24 hours, though some of it likely due to a holiday backlog. Nearly 1 in 100 Americans now testing positive in just the last week. Hospitalizations up 41% in 2 weeks. President Biden tonight saying the unvaccinated are hardest hit.
There's no excuse. No excuse for anyone being unvaccinated.
It's a critical moment for the president, who came to office vowing to shut down the virus, but now faces an unprecedented COVID surge. The president under fire for not being prepared on testing. Last month, he promised free at-home tests for Americans starting now.
Rapid tests will start going out in the beginning of January because they're being produced now.
But today, the White House acknowledging it still has not finalized a contract with test manufacturers, nor unveiled its website to order tests. Meanwhile, President Biden's advising Americans to use Google.
I know this remains frustrating. Believe me, it's frustrating to me. But we're making improvements. COVID test near me on Google to find the nearest site where you can get a test.
But states tonight are pleading for help.
We do not have enough testing to go around. I don't think any state has enough testing to go around.
And massive testing lines remain from coast to coast.
You can't find an at-home rapid test in this area.
At least 21 states now reporting hospitalization records, and some healthcare centers are again overwhelmed and understaffed.
And so
Maryland declaring a state of emergency.
The next 4 to 6 weeks will be the most challenging time of the entire pandemic.
In Rhode Island, 2 medical centers calling COVID-positive healthcare workers back to the job if they have mild symptoms. The impact growing on schools, too. The Chicago Teachers Union voting tonight whether they'll refuse to report in person beginning tomorrow and instead teach remotely. Many schools in Philadelphia now joining Atlanta, Newark, and Milwaukee temporarily going remote due to rising cases and staff shortages.
It's like harder for me to learn because some of the stuff I don't know because it's new.
Peter, I know the CDC has faced backlash for advising COVID patients that they don't need a negative test to get out of isolation. Now I understand the CDC has issued an update. What do we know?
Yeah, Lester, that's right. The agency is still saying no negative test is required to get out of its recommended 5-day isolation period, though they say you should still wear a mask. Critics had questioned the policy since people could still be contagious. The CDC tonight says if you want to take a test and test positive, keep isolating for another 5 days. Lester?
Peter Alexander at the White House tonight. Thank you. While the president says testing will improve, right now many Americans are waiting days for the results and hours just to get tested. Gabe Gutierrez went inside one of the country's largest labs, which says it's busier than ever.
With lines for rapid COVID tests snaking nationwide, wait times for more accurate PCR test results are also stretching longer.
I would love to have my results. I want to go back to work.
There we go. Today, NBC News got a rare look inside one of the largest testing facilities in the country. Is this running basically 24/7 now?
Correct. 24/7, 365. We never shut down.
This is Northwell Health's 100,000 square foot core lab outside New York City.
These samples were processed just within the last few hours. These arrived just within the past day and are about to be put into a machine like that one. Right now, this lab alone is handling 25,000 tests a day.
Of those tests, about a third turn out to be COVID positive. Virtually all, Dr. Dwayne Bryden says, are Omicron.
how quickly did the Omicron variant really take through?
From 1 week to the next, it went from 20% of our cases to 80% of our cases. That was about 2 weeks ago, so we're up in the 100% range now.
The typical turnaround time for test results here is less than 48 hours. Other smaller labs are taking much longer.
So far, we're hanging on, but we're hanging on by our fingernails.
Northwell is also launching a new system where patients can track their results by scanning a unique barcode with their smartphones.
This tube comes into the laboratory. When it's received here, you get a text message that says your specimen's in the laboratory.
But for those still waiting,
What would you tell people who are frustrated that we're not further along in testing nearly 2 years into this pandemic?
Yeah, I think it's taken a while for government to get on its footing and to have a coherent response to this. I think we're more on the right track now than we were before, but we're still catching up to this.
that lab says about half of its positive tests are from people who are not showing symptoms, Lester.
Gabe Gutierrez tonight. Thank you. Let's turn to that report on jobs. A record 4.5 million people quit their jobs in November, while the month ended with 10.6 million jobs open. Our Stephanie Rule joins us. Stephanie, what's behind these numbers?
Lester, the headline is dramatic, but it doesn't tell the whole story. What we're seeing is a workforce shift. People in lower wage jobs like retail and hospitality have higher exposure to COVID and a lot more stress these days with frustrated customers. Many of them are moving into work from home jobs or more secure environments like warehouses. The good news, though, all of this is a sign of economic strength that so many can quit and find other work, and they are gaining leverage with employers. Right now, higher pay, better perks. But the downside across the board, wages aren't moving up as fast as inflation is. And Lester, higher pay doesn't mean much when everything costs more.
All right, Stephanie, thanks for putting it in perspective. A major development in the misdemeanor sex crime case against former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. The Albany County DA today moving to drop the forcible touching charge against Cuomo involving a former aide. The DA said the alleged victim was credible, but the case was too difficult to prove. The U.S. Capitol is on high alert tonight, just 2 days before the anniversary of the January 6th attack. Garrett Hake is there.
From the outside, the U.S. Capitol looks much like it did this time last year, before it's ransacked by rioters on January 6th.
The way the police department's operating, our equipment, our training, our planning, all has improved since then.
With $100 million from Congress, new Capitol Police Chief Tom Manger went to work reforming the department in July.
In terms of keeping this place safe, what keeps you up at night now?
I think that for right now it's the staffing issues. We're right now probably 200 officers below what we had pre-January 6th, and we're 400 below what we really need.
Congress also set aside $300 million for physical security improvements.
We have spent significant effort of reinforcing the doors, both exterior and interior.
Democratic lawmakers point to some of their Republican colleagues' efforts to downplay the attack and the few who embrace violent language as a continuing security risk. Does the rhetoric of some of the members here, the threats, the things of that nature, make your job harder?
It certainly has increased the workload. The threats against Congress have gone through the roof.
Are we safer here now than we were then?
I think moderately.
Democrat Tim Ryan oversees Capitol security funding.
Making all this safe would be expensive.
Yeah. It's expensive to have an insurrection, and they prevent
We murdering these niggas, bro.
This is painless.
Oh my gosh.
To protect our society.
Chief Manger told reporters today there are no concerning threats to the Capitol tied to Thursday's anniversary. Lester?
Garrett Hake at the Capitol. Thank you. In 60 seconds, how a Texas real estate agent now in prison joined the Capitol riot. She tells us if she has regrets a year later. We're back now with our series State of Extremism. Tonight, the Texas realtor now in prison for her role in the January 6th riot. Before she began serving a 60-day sentence, NBC News interviewed her to learn what led her down this path. Here's Kate Snow.
We're going to go down and storm the Capitol. That's why we came, and so that's what we're going to go do. So wish me luck.
Texas realtor Jenna Ryan became one of the most visible participants on January 6th, thanks to her own social media posts. She was invited to fly to D.C. on a private jet by an acquaintance to attend a rally protesting the results of the 2020 election. She documented every move. posts that became evidence used against her in court.
We're all going to be up here and we're going to be breaking those windows.
Ryan says in the end she was never violent, but pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor for illegally entering the Capitol building. You did walk into the Capitol, Jennifer.
I did.
You wrote on Twitter the next day, "We just stormed the Capitol. It was one of the best days of my life."
You know what? I feel like walking into the Capitol for 2 minutes and 8 seconds was a big mistake. And I pled guilty to that. And I have remorse for that.
The mob ahead of you was breaking windows and forcing their way in.
Okay, well, you would have to be there to really understand the whole situation. People see footage on TV that I wasn't privy to. So to me, it was like we were saying, excuse me, people were polite, and it was beautiful.
Seamus Hughes with George Washington University is closely tracking the January 6th cases.
You're only on there for 2 minutes, but let's put it in context. 1,000 other people were there too. 100 police officers were attacked that day. $1 million worth of property damage. The certification of the election was delayed. I mean, these are serious events.
And every individual is a part of that.
Absolutely.
He says Ryan's 60-day sentence is one of the longest for those charged with nonviolent offenses. Do you think the judge is trying to make it?
The judge wanted to put a point on it, that this was a crime.
After walking out of the Capitol, Ryan posted this photo of a broken window with a caption.
If the media doesn't quit lying, we're going to come after them next. So,
As a person in the media, that's
Right.
a threatening thing to say.
it's protected. It's protected speech.
People will hear that and think, that's a violent thing to say. And you're showing a broken window next to you. That's what's hard for people to reconcile.
Okay, and so here you go. Back to mob mentality. You get in a crowd of people, and it creates a different environment.
We're gonna go in here. Life or death. It doesn't matter.
In an interview with NBC's Cynthia McFadden last January, Ryan called herself a martyr.
I am being persecuted here.
She pushed her claim even further in our December interview, comparing herself to victims of genocide.
They are calling me entitled. They're making fun of my skin color. They're calling me an insurrection Barbie. They don't see me as a human. And so that is the epitome of a scapegoat. Just like they did that to the Jews in Germany.
Do you compare what's happening to the Holocaust?
You know what's so sad? That I'm afraid to answer your question because I will be attacked for saying that. I mean, people say that is what it's like. They're like, we feel like that's happening.
I think it's clear through her online postings and the letter to the judge that
The bot won! We won by the bot killing the dude.
You hope you get beat in prison. Some people see you as
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
okay, to make your name.
We won by the fucking robot killing the
You do
fucking
say that, and that is so, you know, I'll say yes.
Oh
For the
shit.
next 6 weeks,
Hey, we did
she's
good
sitting
though.
in
That was
prison
victory.
in
That was
Bryan,
flawless
Texas.
victory. Good job,
Kids,
guys.
NBC
Oh
Next, the
shit.
end of an era for a
Flawless victory.
If you were still holding on to that classic
Oh my
BlackBerry
gosh.
phone, we've got some bad news.
Save highlight for sure.
Before the iPhone, there was the BlackBerry. From presidents and politicians to celebrities and CEOs, BlackBerries, with their first-of-its-kind keyboard, quickly became a status symbol. But tonight, 24 years after the revolution began, the classic BlackBerry phone has gone dark. Other technology, like older medical alert devices and older phones that millions of Americans still use that rely on 3G signals, will also cease to work as early as next month. That older technology pushed out to free up valuable airwaves to connect more advanced devices. Hard to believe just 10 years ago, there were 80 million active BlackBerry users, invading places most had never used a phone before because of distracting sounds.
That was around the era where we first started sending messages, emails, and composing lengthy things on our phones.
So addictive, they became known as crackberries.
All essential personnel will be issued BlackBerries for company use. Gimme.
What happened to the BlackBerry? The iPhone happened.
What we're going to do is get rid of all these buttons and just make a giant screen.
And just like that, the smartphone took over the world.
If you rely on an early model medical device or telephone and you're not sure if it's going to work, speak to the manufacturer because some are offering discounted or free upgrades. Lester?
All right, Jerry, I missed that click of the keyboard. Thank you. Up next, the Super Bowl champ on COVID's front lines. Finally, this evening, we visit a young man we first told you about earlier in the pandemic, a Super Bowl champ who decided to do his part. Here's Kevin Tibbles.
When the New York Jets take the field, there's a doctor in the house.
I'm a professional player for the New York Jets, and I also hold a doctorate in medicine.
Lineman Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, Larry to his teammates, made quite a bit of history at the onset of the COVID pandemic. Right after winning the Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs, he decided to opt out of playing last year. Instead of pads and jersey, Larry donned scrubs and a mask.
The NFL gave me so much, my family gave me so much, and at some point it's time to give back.
After receiving his medical degree from Montreal's McGill University, he went to work in a long-term care facility to save the lives of patients battling COVID, a decision his former quarterback admired.
He wants to make sure he's doing something to make the world a better place.
Larry is showing everyone in the NFL and outside of it that you can step up and make a difference.
Was it the toughest thing you've ever done?
Yeah, I like to think that I'm a mentally tough person. But in 2020, I was coming back home sometimes to my girlfriend, and I was crying, because what else can you do?
What did you learn?
Medicine is an art more than a profession. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be a better physician because of what I went through in 2020.
He will always be the lineman who worked on the front lines of COVID. Kevin Tibbles, NBC News.
That's nightly news for this Tuesday. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night.
I am Lester Holt. Take care of me and each other and all that shit. Damn, my niggas died already? Fuck, dude. Nothing like your nigga to come through and save you.
What's remarkable here is that it appears that it is well documented now the former president's inaction that day for a number of hours from multiple sources, first-hand sources. You have new reporting. What are you learning?
So first of all, let's just put it out there. This is bad news for Donald Trump. So in addition to what Congresswoman Cheney said, a person with knowledge of the investigation has told me that the January 6th committee has information from multiple sources with firsthand knowledge. So not just one source, and that these sources describe what President Trump, as you said, was saying, doing, and not doing during the riot. The source said, quote, "There's a collection of people with relevant information." Translation, firsthand indicates someone with direct contact or knowledge. It could be someone who is in the room, someone on the phone, someone with just direct firsthand information. Bottom line, the committee has broken through Trump's wall.
Right. And Jamie, do you have any indication as to who some of these people might be?
So we don't know about a lot of people. More than 300 people have testified. But there's one witness who has publicly given a deposition to the committee, and that's Keith Kellogg, former Vice President Mike Pence's national security advisor, who was actually with Trump in the White House when the riot was going on. The national security advisor, the normal one, Robert O'Brien, was on the road, so Kellogg was filling in. And our colleague, Alex Marquardt, reached out to Kellogg, who told him, he confirmed, that he testified under oath to the January 6th committee. He is cooperating, but he declined to comment about the substance of his deposition. Just for context, Kellogg is an interesting witness because he's considered a Trump loyalist, but he's also a retired general who I'm told takes his testimony seriously. Again, he was in the room with Donald Trump during the riot.
So this is a consistent message from the committee. Why, in particular, are they underscoring this right now?
So my understanding is this is part of the committee's strategy to let Trump know they are sending a message that people who are in the room, possibly his inner circle, are cooperating. It's a warning to Trump that even as some people like Steve Bannon are delaying, trying to defy the committee is still getting critical firsthand evidence. And
Damn, I lost the end.
It sends a message to others in Trump world that key people are cooperating. They should cooperate too. That's not to say the committee doesn't want information like the documents from the National Archives. Clearly they do. But this is a warning to Donald Trump that pieces of the puzzle are coming together from behind the wall.
Yeah, perhaps that more people than he even knows have come forward and revealed information.
Absolutely.
Jamie and Gail, fascinating as always. Thank you so much.
Joining us now.
Right now, I'm just playing some news. Some news for you guys. This is a lot of politics is about to be popping up. A lot of this, a lot of that. I'm gonna go ahead and start getting into some of that stuff. Hood politics coming soon.
Jennings, he's former special assistant to President George W. Bush, also worked for a long time for Mitch McConnell. Scott, always good to have you on.
I gotta brush up on my history,
So I should note of course, McConnell did not vote to impeach here. I wonder, as you hear that reporting there about the pieces coming together, about a minimum the president on the day of January 6th, are there enough puzzle pieces in your view Republican to step away from?
Well, it's a great question. I think the reckoning on this will come in 2024 if he seeks the nomination for the presidency again. I mean, look, I voted for him twice. I'm quite pleased with most of the policy outcomes of the Trump administration. But what's become clear is that he violated his oath of office. And I think we already knew a lot of this. He did not act on that day to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. It is in his oath of office. And so as a party, Jim, what we're going to end up having to reckon with here is, can you return someone to the White House? Will you support someone going back to the White House who, in a moment of crisis, chose to violate their oath of office? It says to the best of my ability. And I think, based on this reporting and based on what we already know, anyone could argue that he acted to do his oath of office to the best of his ability.
And Scott, according to at least Liz Cheney, the answer to your question as to whether he can return to the Oval Office and become president again of the United States, given his inaction, is no. But it's not just from people like yourselves or Mitch McConnell that we heard condemn those inactions. The days and the hours following the insurrection, we heard from Kevin McCarthy. Now we heard, thanks to Liz Cheney over the weekend, saying that Ivanka Trump went in twice to tell her father to do something. And the same with Mark Meadows, getting text messages from Donald Trump Jr., having his dad stop it if he can, please. And yet just days and weeks after that, the situation seemed to change. Why do you think that is? And what message are voters and Trump supporters sending?
Well, I mean, obviously, Donald Trump has stayed on his course and stayed on his message that the election was stolen. And he is the most influential Republican in the country. The grassroots of the Republican Party see him as the leader of the party, and they are more inclined to believe what he says about this matter than, you know, anyone in Congress or me or anyone else for that matter. And so as long as that is the case, that is going to be the prevailing opinion. It's not everybody's opinion in the Republican Party, but yeah, if you go out to a party meeting these days, you'll find a lot of people who not only agree with Donald Trump that the election was stolen, but believe, you know, he should be returned to the presidency. Now, I assume we're going to have a big primary about this in 2024. If I had to put money on it today, I'd say Trump's the odds-on favorite to be the nominee, but surely somebody will stand up to this man and say, I liked a lot of what you did, but January 6th was an unforgivable day.
So I suppose the question then is who, right? I mean, over the weekend, Peter Meyer, one of the 10 House Republicans who voted to impeach former Trump and now drawing ire from the former president, some of the supporters said, echoing you, at the end of the day, there's no other option right now in the Republican Party. It's a sad testament. Is there really no other option? Handicap this if you can. Who could stand up?
Yeah, I totally disagree with that statement. I mean, I understand his analysis, which at the moment, if a primary were held, it's obvious Donald Trump would be the nominee. But we have a number of people who could not only execute the same policies you loved about Donald Trump, but also not violate their oath of office in the process. I mean, you look at the governor of Florida, DeSantis. You look at Tim Scott of South Carolina. You look at Nikki Haley. You look at Ted Cruz. Look, go down the line. We have a number of highly qualified Republicans. Mike Pence. We have a number of highly qualified Republicans who could fulfill the duties of this office, win a national election, and not drag this January 6th baggage into another national election. I actually believe Trump, there's some small chance he could win a national election in 2024, but as a Republican Party, is that what's best for us? Is that what's best for the country? I argue, and I think many Republicans believe, but maybe can't say out loud, there's a whole raft of people that could do this, win an election, and fulfill the policy goals that we have without dragging all this baggage along.
Goes back to Jim's question, though. Who? I guess time will tell. Scott Jennings, thank you. As always.
I will just say, I think many people are going to run. I don't think he's going to get a pass. Now, whether they beat him or not, I don't know. But I think you're going to see people file who aren't, sort of from the never Trump land. But people who legitimately can say, I voted for Trump. I support the policies, but we can't win with it. I think you're going to see candidacies like that come forward. The question is, can they be successful?
We'll see, right? Because one commonality among that list you mentioned, right, is that none of those potential candidates has said decisively, I will not stand for this, as you just said there. That'll be a big test as we get close to 2024.
Scott, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Thanks as always.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Start with some big pictures here. We're on the cusp of the first anniversary from January 6th. If I asked you today, do you have a better sense of whether this was a protest that got out of hand or a coordinated effort to attack the Capitol? How would you answer that question 1 year later?
Well, I think it would have been a little bit of both, Chuck. Obviously, some people came upset with what happened in the November election, but others came with ulterior motives. And so you had citizens who had the right to protest, who thought that was the end of what would happen, and you had others who obviously came with bear spray, camouflage, Kevlar, hockey sticks, everything prepared to do something else. And the fact that those two convergence of individuals came together at the same time, and that is what we ended up with. I think a lot of people got caught up in the moment, had no intentions of going, but when the president said they're up there now, taking your rights away from you, you need to go there, they need to hear from you, and I'll be there. Well, that kind of weaponized the entire crowd to go to the Capitol.
Have you been able to determine what President Trump was doing while the Capitol was under attack? How much clearer is that picture today than it was on January 6th?
Well, it's about 187 minutes. We have now determined he was in the White House. We've determined that a number of people made attempts to contact him through his chief of staff. Some of those text messages we shared on our presentation of the contempt citation for Mark Meadows. We also have information of other individuals who made calls trying to get some semblance of response out of the White House. But for that 187 minutes, nothing happened. We do know now that several
videos were made. We don't have them yet. Before the right one was released, but we requested it from the National Archives, that and all other information. So President was told, you need to say directly to your people to go home, leave the Capitol. And so it took over 187 minutes to make that simple statement. Something wrong with that.
Have you seen any evidence, or do you have any indication that maybe members of Congress assisted any of the rioters on that day?
Yes, we have a lot of information about communication with individuals who came. Now, assisted means different things. Some took pictures with people who came to stop the Steele rally. Some, allowed them to come and associate in their offices and other things during that whole rally week. So there's some participation. We don't have any real knowledge that I'm aware of people giving tours. We heard a lot of that, but we're still, to be honest with you, reviewing a lot of the film that the House administration and others have provided to committee. But we do have members who obviously, clearly trying to prevent the certification from occurring. And so some of those members we've contacted or started the process of contacting, asking them to come in and talk to us.
Shit. We know a couple of them that have gone, that you've gone.
I almost say everybody. Almost say everybody.
I'm curious, and they're not yet cooperating.
Shit.
And I wanna get to that in a second. You have Congress who were part of this, who have already voluntarily helped you without you having to send a letter.
Well, we've had a number of members of Congress to give us information on what they heard that might have gone on. We heard directly from members referring us to other individuals. But we heard from those early on. Now we are trying to get to those individuals that we have basically identified that they have participated. Representative Perry and Jordan are two of those individuals that we've sent letters to asking them to voluntarily cooperate. But there were a lot of experiences on that day, Chuck. I was in the Capitol. A lot of other members didn't really know what was going on for quite a while, other than the fact that all hell had broken loose in a place where we thought would never happen. So those members are concerned, but they have respected the committee's wishes to go forward and find the facts and circumstances, and that's what we're doing. As you know, we've talked to over 300 people all over the country.
Do you think you're gonna have to subpoena? Do you think you're gonna have to subpoena a sitting member of Congress?
Well, I think there's some questions of whether we have the authority to do it. We're looking at it. If the authorities are there, there'll be no reluctance on our part.